Hello, everybody. Welcome to the space where we have candid and relatable conversations with entrepreneurs and small business owners about their journey. It's business and it's personal. It's the Well-Rounded Podcast, and I am your host, Tisha Holman. I am so excited today to have Kirstyn Allen with me. Guys, you are in for a huge treat, trust me. But let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started. So Kirstyn Allen is an award-winning sales and marketing leader who has contributed millions of dollars to Fortune 500 tech companies throughout her career. She leverages that experience and knowledge to coach experts on landing more corporate contracts using a simple client attraction system. Her clients have landed contracts with household names like Louis Vuitton and several nonprofit organizations. In addition, she serves as a certified international leadership trainer and coach to corporate clients across various industries. Welcome, Kirstyn.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Tisha. I'm excited for the conversation.
So am I. So I know you have lots of gems to drop, so let's get right into it. Tell us about your journey as an entrepreneur. How did you get here?
Absolutely. So first of all, hi, everyone. As you mentioned, I'm Kirstyn Allen, super excited for the conversation today. So how I got started, of course, for all of our stories, there's many different journeys, ups, downs, highs, lows, all the things. And so although I love the bio that I've been able to create and the accomplishments, I did not always start there. So I've had aspirations to be an entrepreneur since I was a little girl. If anyone else can relate, I was the one who had the lemonade stand out front of our apartment. I got my mom to buy me business cards from Vistaprint for my in-home nail salon. I had all these different endeavors before I even knew what the word entrepreneurship meant. I just had that desire inside of me to create my own money. And so essentially growing up, I had those kind of rose-colored glasses. And then as I got towards my college career and even graduation, reality set and the belief of the American dream became more of a reality to me than what I thought I wanted to do when I was a young girl. And so I worked my way up. I got the dream job. I had my choice of jobs of graduation, and I chose to go into the tech industry in a sales role, which was a great experience. When I look back on it now, though, there were many tears as I worked my way up through promotions and had the opportunity to get all the way up to an account executive where I was meeting clients all across the nation, really, mostly in the Northeast, but all over, selling six figures and multi-million-dollar contracts, and literally thought nothing of it. It was just my job. It was just what I had started my career in and was able to work up to, but I had no understanding of the skill that I was learning. And even just thinking about the money I was creating for the company, I just, again, felt like I'm just doing a good job. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until the pandemic happened, which I'm sure many people have experienced, where I had this awakening that I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was achieving all the boxes, checking things off, being the first to do this, the youngest to do this, the only one to do that. But none of it was in alignment with what I desired and saw for myself. And there were little inklings of that throughout the career that I would have. And I would just say, nope, let's just get another check. Like, no, I can just put that all to the side. But again, that pandemic moment for me sitting inside, I had a newborn son at the time. So I just had all of these different revelations. And I'm like, this isn't what I truly desire for myself. I've always had dreams of being an entrepreneur. I had even started little smaller businesses, but really never like dove into the idea that this could truly be my reality as a wife, as a mom, as a homeowner, and all the things. And so at that point, I decided to create alignment with what I truly desired and what I believed could be true for me. And I started my business. Now, it originally started as a marketing consulting firm. And so I did all the things opposite of the experience that I just told you. So the corporate job to me, I was like, all the skills and all of that, leave that over there. Let's start using the marketing degree that I got and the interest that I have in that. And that was more so of how I started the business to like get away from the past skills. And I tell that part because it's really important to what we're going to pour into you today and what I'm going to share, because oftentimes we do that. We kind of shut the door on the skill sets instead of using them and leveraging them to build our own business. Anyway, so did all those things and then got introduced to the coaching world. And I've been a mentor before. Again, I talked through my accomplishments. So I've been in positions of leadership, team lead, mentor, all those things. And I never thought about, well, I could teach my skill sets to people and, coach them through how to achieve certain things. And so I'm like, okay, let me go down that rabbit hole. And as I've done that, then I started finding more entrepreneurs want to know about corporate contracts. And it was actually through another mentor of mine when I was telling her my experience. And she was like, you don't talk anything about that, online and those things that you do and people want to know. And so I said, okay, well, I'll put it out there and see what people say. I mean, like, this was my corporate job. Like, nobody's going to be into that. Put it out there. I was completely wrong, obviously. People were instantly intrigued to learn more about how they could tap into these opportunities. And while I was building, a consumer business and trying to figure out how to market in that way, I had no idea that I could leverage those skill sets and that be the turn of my company and how we created success in the future. So now we coach individuals. We do strategy and consulting around helping entrepreneurs to land more contracts in their business using a simplified strategy, using the relationships and all the things that I learned from Fortune 500 companies that created billions of dollars and bringing that entrepreneur lens on it to tap into some opportunities for our businesses. So that is the story in a nutshell.
Love it. And it's so funny because I can relate to the kid entrepreneur thing. It got me to thinking. So I had a lemonade stand too. And then also when family would come over and visit us, I had this little table that I would roll out to the entryway in the house. And it was called the Grand Luxury Hotel. So family had to check into the Grand Luxury Hotel. And I was like their little concierge and stuff. It was hilarious and worked for tips for sure.
Right.
Yes. So this is awesome. As you kind of already tapped on, the idea of corporate contracts for business owners is like, it's very hot and it seems to be this elusive, mysterious thing. It seems like when people start talking about corporate contracts, it's the same list when people say, oh, there's all these grants out there for women business owners or, Black women business owners. And it's like, okay, where are these mysterious grants and how does one obtain these mysterious contracts? Because I know personally, I have seen lots of content online where people are talking about working with all of these very, very cool brands. And I've had some experiences with it. And a lot of those were really like referrals or word of mouth, somebody that saw me at speaking at a conference or something like that. And so I know that this is an area of business that people want to tap into specifically. I'm not one that, we just had the election and we can probably anticipate a lot of changes and adjustments. I don't like to look at the potential of those changes as changes and adjustments from a perspective of fear or a scarcity mindset. But I do have the understanding that as business owners, we need to make sure that we are prepared, that we have multiple streams of income, and that we are leveraging all of our skill sets to help continue to grow and scale our businesses. So I am very, very curious to hear what are corporate contracts. Let's start by defining that, because I'm sure that there may be some definitions that are warranted to be cleared up in this area. What's a corporate contract?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that because most people do think it's only the brands that we know and love every day, our Targets, our Googles, our Amazons, and all those things. But those are not the only opportunities. And those are not the only people who have six figures, $1 million budgets that they allocate to hire vendors like you. And so when I work with people, the first thing that I explain is corporate is an umbrella. And there are so many different segments within that in which you can tap into. So of course, there are for-profit organizations, but not just the $1 billion or Fortune 500s. There are mid-sized companies that you probably never even heard of that have a need and that will bring you in for your particular expertise. And then there are also small businesses. And so most people don't know that small business is typically classified under $40 million in revenue. And so there's all different types of size of businesses underneath that. And again, more at the middle and high level of that range, those folks have significant budgets that you can work with as well. I know people that are getting 6-figure contracts from quote unquote small businesses. And so that's one lane. The next one is you could also work with nonprofit entities. So most people also think that nonprofits don't have money. Could not be further from the truth. The right established nonprofits, again, even just thinking about that small business range, there are nonprofits that are very successful. They're just not bringing in cash as a traditional for-profit organization. They have different tax designation. Does not mean they don't have money coming in and have budgets that they can allocate towards services, no matter what that looks like for you. So that's another lane. Next lane is universities. So although these are educational or schools, I still put it all under the umbrella of getting contracts. Universities also have needs across various different industries that, again, you could tap into, whether it's working with the students or even the staff and faculty. And then the last one, which is kind of in the same vein, actually, I have two more. The next one is going to be K-12, which is in the same vein, but again, loads of opportunity. Just here in Atlanta, the Atlanta public school system has an operating budget of like $1 billion. And they spend quite a bit of that with vendors who do services just like many of us do. So don't sleep on the school systems. And then the last one that is also kind of, sometimes the K-12 schools also are part of government. And so government contracts, of course, can be a different mode in terms of paperwork, and the ways in which to get in are a little bit different. However, relationships carry you in any type of element that I shared with you, whether it's government or not. And so a lot of what I teach is about building those, about being authentic about the work that you do and making the right connections so that you can just move into what areas that you feel are most aligned with the work that you do. So those are like all the potential elements of how you can tap in. So it does not just have to be like, who can I reach out to at Google today? Because what is also really the truth is sometimes with these larger companies, depending on where you're getting in and what the budget is for that particular department, you might find a way smaller budget than what you think. And with what a mid-sized company or a university or some of these other agencies or organizations could pay you for your work. So.
Wow. Okay. Look, we could stop the recording right there, and people, that right there was a tremendous amount of value. But let me double click on what you said. So various levels of business. I just learned something because I wouldn't have even considered K-12s as an opportunity. Yes. I think my level of understanding stopped at university. So I just learned something. When we talk about the work that they can do, that somebody can do, is it just maybe the specific service that you provide, or are we talking about like trainings and corporate retreats, team buildings that are like parallel with our skill set? Like, what do you do?
Yes.
With the contract?
I love this question. I'm like over here getting goosebumps, like, oh my gosh, we could go so many different areas. Okay. Anyway, focus. So yes, you can actually do the services you provide. So like marketing services or digital, whether it's in person, advertising services, things of that nature. Bookkeeping, like professional services is definitely one option. But what you're alluding to, which I feel is like the gold mine for anyone that is looking to get contracts, is to go more of that. It's an echo. I don't know.
I can't hear it.
Okay. All right, cool. Sorry. No. Going back. So what was our question? Let me make sure I get that right. Okay. And so more than just doing the services, what I think is really lucrative is the teaching side or training or consulting piece that can be a lot more lucrative than some of the done for you type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so in that, yes, focusing on things like professional development, getting in with company retreats or events, or being a keynote speaker for, some of their presentations or conferences that they may have is definitely an opportunity. But where I really like to focus on with people is how do we develop your expertise into some type of ongoing program that you walk people through, whether that is a workshop. I have a client actually today, as we're recording this, flying out to a university to do a 2-day workshop based on her expertise. And how do you create those ongoing opportunities to really teach more of what you do? Because they'll pay more for consulting or training, leadership, professional development than some of the kind of service-based type of things. Doesn't mean don't do it. I just mean that that's a great opportunity to also give you some leverage. Because if you're already doing done for you stuff in your business, what's really a smart move is to use some of the corporate stuff that doesn't take a lot of your time to give you a good baseline in your business where you're like, okay, we have a 6-figure contract and I do, maybe 4 touch points with them a year or something like that with whatever it is that you do. And that is a smart play of how you can move forward. Now, the other things that you could do, you could license courses, right? So you could do something that's on demand, that's repeatable, that you could sell to multiple organizations, and you only showed up one time to do it. So that could be an opportunity, but really the possibilities are endless. I have people that do things that are more experiential, like yoga, or I have someone that's into sound healing, like experience like that are more focused on stress relief and mindfulness. I have a client that has like a whole breathing meditation thing that she takes people through. And so those things are also valuable to organizations that want to retain their staff, but also recognize that they're experiencing a lot of turnover due to stress and burnout. Mm-hmm. And so right now they're really focused on how they can do different things to combat that and make sure that people are happy and more productive. And so with whatever you decide to bring to organizations, 2 things I want you to remember. Number 1, they only pay for 2 things, either to save more money or make more money. There are all types of things of which that could fall into, like retaining, reducing turnover, all of those things. And so whatever you decide to bring to an organization, that's the first thing that you want to think about is what is that value add to the bottom line that I have? Because it's great for people to be happy. It's great for people to be all these things, but they're like, how is this going to benefit the organization? And that's the only way that you're going to tap into these budget numbers that they have. Otherwise, it's nice to have or something that they'll let you come in and do for free, and you don't want to do that. And so that's really the second thing. So understanding where you fall in that and making sure when you speak about the work that you do, you're very clear on how it ties to the bottom line.
Wow. So as you were speaking and explaining the piece about the workshops and the ongoing content, guys, this is what I'm talking about as far as identifying ways that you can expand the work that you do. If you are listening to this podcast, you are a service-based business owner, likely, right? So there is your intellectual property, there's something that you have in your intellectual property arsenal that is evergreen. And by evergreen, that means it's going to be timeless, classic, always valuable to your audience. The example that I like to use about that is the Bible for church-going people. The Bible is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The Bible, the content in the Bible will always be relevant to people, religious folks. And it's the same thing. What is the Bible in your organization and the work that you do? And how can you build something around that can actually be the gift that keeps on giving for you? So let's talk about positioning and being ready for this opportunity. So to give you a little like unicorn backstory about me, I have never hired a publicist, but I have done like 25 TV appearances, a whole bunch of press and all this kind of stuff. I kind of did it quick and dirty, School of Hard Knocks, and pitched myself and was blessed and fortunate to be able to get these opportunities for exposure. I speak at a lot of conferences, so people see me there. I'm an author working on number 5 right now. So there are things that I have out there that are helping me establish myself as an expert and a thought leader in what I'm doing. For people who have not had those experiences, for the person that still has that book inside that they need to birth, for the person that is still trying to figure out how to get on stages and speak at some of these conferences, for the person who's wondering, how do I get in the media, get those opportunities, and is what I even have to say valuable, knowing that they are resting on a gold mine of expertise and knowledge. They just haven't positioned themselves to get it yet. So what does one need to do to begin to position themselves to be a competitive consideration for these opportunities?
Yeah. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I know that oftentimes our default mind will figure out how we can put roadblocks in place of something. We can hear something, and then that's where our mind goes. And so if anyone's already kind of in that space, first of all, I want you to just hear me out, kind of put some of those things aside, because we could be sitting here and putting roadblocks in front of our path despite what we've accomplished as well. So there's always something that could be more, but work with what you have. And so what I tell people, especially like as I'm helping them like develop their capability statement, which is something that you will want to start preparing for as you go through these opportunities, is think about, stand on your experience. They're not looking for you to be an expert in anything that's outside of your wheelhouse. So I've had some people say, well, I haven't worked with these organizations like this before. And I'm like, well, what did you do for work? And they're like, oh, yeah, I worked with these school systems. I'm like, that's your past performance. Mm-hmm. Like those things count. So just because it wasn't necessarily a contract, you still did the work to understand everything that is within your wheelhouse and expertise up to this point. Use it all. Talk about it all. Like that's your thing to stand on. If you don't have the accolades, you're not on stages, you don't have the books and all of that, stand on what you know to be true, that you probably have decades or multiple decades of experience in, and understand the value of that is going to be the first thing. And so maybe you need to do a brain dump. And sometimes I do this, especially with new clients. And I'm like, okay, tell me everything. Like, what are all the areas that you have yet to uncover that you may not be doing in your business today, but that are things you still know like the back of your hand, that if I put you in front of somebody and they're like, hey, tell me about this, you could go on and on and on, because that could be the thing in which corporations are looking to buy from you. And again, it's easy. It's like how I mentioned early on in my story. I never thought about doing this at all until someone brought it up for me. And I was like, okay, yeah. So it could be a similar thing. What is that easy thing that you can just really stand on and talk about with no notes and just do? You could do a 90-minute workshop on, and people could get value. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing to recognize. Take stock of what you have and then do things. The next piece is going to be getting prepared. So a capability statement, I want to make a definition for that for those who may not know what that is essentially a resume for your business. And it's a common marketing tool among corporate and government contracts to give a snapshot of what are your core competencies in your business, making sure you classify your business by certain codes, which helps people be able to find folks like you. So if they're looking for someone to do professional development training, or they're looking for someone to do marketing consulting services, there are codes that classify your business underneath those categories to help you get found. And so putting yourself out there by creating that is a powerful step. And then I'll share with you ways that you can leverage and use that. But that statement is your marketing tool. It is how you share what you are good at, what your competencies are, how people can connect with you, more about your company, and shows that you're prepared for these opportunities. And so there are million different ways that you can create it. If you Google it, you'll be able to see some different options and ways to format it. And then when you have that prepared, and when you know what your value is and the skill sets that you're looking to bring to organizations, now it's time to start putting yourself in the realm to be getting some of these opportunities coming to you. And so that looks like a few different ways. Every company, typically at a certain size, I would say maybe mid-sized companies and above, they have some type of vendor portal where you can just submit your information. And if you have a service that's aligned with what they're looking for, they can reach out to you. So that's a step that everyone could take. most companies or organizations that you can think of have those portals. Go to their website, look up supplier diversity or vendor procurement, something to that effect, and you should be able to find those and tap into those opportunities. Another thing is start making connections. So maybe you're not on stages, but you have access to contact decision makers just by using LinkedIn. So get on LinkedIn, figure out again, who are those companies that you want to contact and who would be the best person to speak with about your services, and just invite them to have a conversation with you. If I could, just give anyone a freedom point to not think too far ahead, every contract starts with a conversation just like you and I are having. It's not this big corporation and this big building that's just unattainable. It is John, who has a 14-year-old that plays baseball and goes to his games just like anyone else. And so you're having that conversation. Another thing that I remind people is that they're looking for an expert in what you do, not what they do. So you don't have to have experience in corporate. You don't have to know the industry in and out and all of that. They want to see how can you benefit us with what you know. And so those are some things that I would keep in mind, and like how I would pace myself. I would get my things together and understand what that looks like. And then I would just start having conversations and look inside my network. Who already works inside of organizations or companies that you already know, that you can say, hey, I would love to start doing this. Can you make a warm introduction for me? Or what would it look like for me to do this at your organization?
Wow. That, you guys, Kirstyn is giving a wealth of knowledge today. And I surely hope that you listening out there are taking copious notes, because she is giving you game right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm so thankful that you are not gatekeeping and being so transparent. That is a challenge sometimes when you tap in to try to find information and learn things, and somebody's telling you just enough to where it's like, oh, I don't even know if this is possible, because how do I do this? So
yep.
And let me say that, folks, just in your business, if you could give everything that you offer in your business away in a conversation on a podcast, in a post on social media, then you got bigger fish to fry, right? Don't gatekeep, right? Sharing the information is generosity is karma too, right? Yeah. So I just appreciate you being so open with the knowledge that you're sharing. Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. What are some things that people should be aware of, meaning, or be careful about as they are pursuing these opportunities?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I could talk about it. So the transparency just comes so easy because I love talking about this. I could talk about it all day. So yes, that is a good point to bring up, because most people on the internet will only tell you the glamorous side. Oh, I landed a multi-million-dollar contract. And while we love that and it's great, I'm like, how many people is behind? Like, I'm analyzing it from the other end of what, not to deter, but just to also give people the full picture of what it looks like. Because a multi-million-dollar contract, you're not doing that as a solopreneur. Like, no. So don't just think like, oh yeah, I shouldn't say never, because obviously there is, people can, find ways to do different things. I'm going to say, generally speaking, that is not the case. And so that is a part of kind of some of the things that you want to be prepared and think about. Do you have the infrastructure and capacity for the contracts that you're looking to go after? So contracts could land at any types of ranges. There could be one-off contracts for $10,000. There could be, again, $400,000 contracts for multiple years. And so the range can be very different. So first, start thinking about, what do you have the capacity to deliver? And also, in the background, start thinking about building relationships. Like, who are some other people who do adjacent work or similar work that you could partner up with on some of these opportunities? If it's more of like longer term engagements, that is your goal, start thinking about who are the players that need to be in place in order to make this successful, because there are going to be a couple of moving parts that you typically want to manage. So yes, there's the delivery, but you want to make sure that you get paid, which can be sometimes another red flag. They have the money, But sometimes it might be some red flags or some red tape, I should say.
Net 120.
Right. Yes. Things like that you need to be aware of. And just to give a quick definition on that. So your typically net 30, net 60 and all of that. Those are the days in which from when you send the invoice that they will pay you. So not from the date you show up, not from the date they say yes, not from the day they receive an invoice from you. Net, meaning this is the amount of time between that in which they should pay you. So a net 30 means 30 days after an invoice is sent, payment. So if you see anything that's above that, 60, 120, like you said, anything crazy, keep in mind that may be something you may want to negotiate or just kind of leave off the table, because who wants to do work and not be paid for 60 days? And sometimes you can't invoice them until after you've completed the work, which is, again, something you may want to negotiate. We can't get into all of that. And I'm not an attorney, but those are things payment wise you want to keep in mind. And you want to have someone that's on your team to make sure that is seamless. Like payments are coming through when they're supposed to, follow-ups are happening and all those things. So that's just one area. The other part that I want to talk about there is legal. So even with people working with me, I'm like, let's get our attorneys looped in, because attorneys, especially, make sure you work with ones who are familiar with small businesses doing B2B contracts. Any attorney? No, we need to make sure they have a specialty in the work that you do and understand the nuance of small businesses going into contracts. And when they do, they understand all those little loopholes and make sure your contracts are airtight to protect your intellectual property. Because if you don't have that, people will use it, not necessarily maliciously, but in a way that puts your business at risk or leaves money on the table for you where you could have licensed something instead of just giving full range and access. So again, not legal advice, but get an attorney is my advice, to walk you through those things and make sure that you protect your business and your intellectual property and that payments are fair on both ends. The other part to keep in mind is insurance. So especially when you're pricing, typically this is not an issue because your price points need to be at a certain level to even be considered as a serious vendor. But typically in some of these larger organizations or larger opportunities, there's a higher insurance requirement. And so you need to know that up front so that you put that into your expenses of delivery and make sure that you're not shooting yourself in the foot profit wise for the insurance that you're going to have to maintain for engagements. So if you're doing things in person, that could be some type of vehicle insurance, or if you're handling sensitive data, there could be, an additional level of insurance that you need for that. So keep those things in mind because they're typically required. And then the last thing that I will say is just overall, as you're getting into these engagements, the contract and deliverables that you're providing, make sure they're very clear. And again, you have someone that is project managing or making sure that people aren't overstepping the scope of work that you laid out in your contract. So you're not signing up for a job. You are not an employee. And so, no, they can't be calling you whenever they get ready for updates. Like everything has to be clear on how you're going to engage with these organizations so that they are level set and that you protect your business and your time moving forward as you engage with the organization.
So speaking of the coins, you said that in order for them to even consider you as a serious vendor for what they're looking for, your prices need to be at a certain point, which sounds to me like this is not the time to undervalue your expertise. Can we talk more about how to determine that when they go into these portals that you're talking about? Are budget ranges going to be listed for particular opportunities, or are they going to say, like in the regular job applications, what is your desired salary for this opportunity? Like, how does the money conversation go as far as negotiating?
Yes. So one, there is no magic number. There are people, like if you just think of a keynote speech, for example, there are people that charge $60,000, $100,000 for a 90-minute keynote. And there are people that charge $25,000 or $10,000 for the same amount of time. The only difference is the value in which you can articulate for the work that you do and how you back that up and how you paint the picture. the keynote speaker has $100,000 rate. They probably have, X, Y, and Z past performance. They have these testimonials, like they're able to say, here's why I can command this rate. They might be, bring a celebrity type of status to the event, right? So they're bringing something and they can showcase and show why they would want to invest this amount in order to bring someone in at this caliber. So whenever you're going after a certain price point, yes, there is generally speaking, you wouldn't want to go in with a keynote for $500. That's crazy. But you also need to be realistic about what is it that you can truly position and say, with your chest, so you don't want to say, oh, it's $50,000. And they're like, what? So what is it that you can truly articulate in terms of your value? But for most of us, especially women in business or people kind of just starting out, we can usually 2x or 3x the prices that we typically charge to get even in the range of what corporations would be looking for. So here's another thing that you can think about when you're working as with business owners or B2C, you're only impacting that one person. Or if you have a group program, you're impacting, a small group of people where they're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million annually in business or whatever the case may be of your ideal client. When you go to these organizations, typically one person is probably responsible for bringing, if not multiple millions, even billions of dollars into that organization, depending on how far up they are in the company. So if you do a workshop with, some sales leaders, I think about myself as a sales account executive. Over 4 years, I brought in over $16 million to that company. One person. If you gave me something that was going to help me be more efficient, more productive, sell better, to even make them another $5 million, you do that for 30 people. Like what impact does that bring to the organization? Whatever price point you charge, they're still going to be getting a deal. So you need to make sure that you understand what's the broader scope of the impact that you make to these organizations, be able to communicate that, but also know that when you price, this should easily be $30,000 for a workshop because I know what the value of the people that I'm focused on. And here's another key tip in organizations. Try to focus on the leadership versus the employees, because that gets you in a whole different other ball game when you're focused on the leaders. They invest in leaders at a high level. And so if you can focus your workshops or whatever you're delivering to the leaders specifically, again, that separates you out. So again, no magic number. There is, of course, your expenses that you account for if you have to bring other people in, any subcontracting type of things that you want to allocate for, but go higher. And if you're not certain into what that would look like specifically, what you can do is just start with market research. So before you do discovery calls, if you're new to the space, I recommend people doing 3 to 5 market research calls within the industries that they're looking to work with. And one of the questions you can just easily ask is, what do you all typically allocate for X, Y, and Z programming? And then you can start to hear more of okay, this company is doing this. This is what they typically spend. This is, the authority that they have to sign over. And then you can start thinking, okay, I know I can charge $10,000 for this. And I know people are paying for it. So then you feel more confident.
Wow. Okay. Very good. So listen, we are at the point in the Well-Rounded podcast where we are at the Mind Your Business segment. All right. So Mind Your Business segment. Kirstyn, I want you to drop a gem for our listeners, although you have dropped a whole cluster of them at this point. But I want you to share with the people something that you wish you knew when you first got started in this space, some type of tip that they can use to maintain balance as a small business owner, just whatever you share, but something that you wish you knew when you started in this space.
Yeah. So if anyone else can relate to being a high achiever, maybe recovering or current perfectionist, I would tell that version of myself that in this game, especially if you're the person that's used to getting A's and B's without hardly trying, that was me in school. So I could kind of
I
float.
didn't have to study.
Right. I could float pretty easily. The only time I kind of got a little friction is when I did like an AP class or something. I was like, ooh, okay, I got to do a little bit more. But like, if you're one of those people who are high achieving and kind of like just most things you could just knock out of the park, and you're focused on like, okay, like, how do I get this right? I need to get this right. Like, I'm at the A level. The one thing I wish I really would have embraced early on is like to get out of that mindset of perfection and like, you know, having to feel like, how can I just get this right type of deal? And really like let it just flow and understand that even in the failures, even where you didn't get everything right, that is all a part of the process. And so for me, entrepreneurship was definitely a lesson in that because it was out of my technical comfort zone. It was something in which I'm used to having control. I'm used to knowing like how to move up in corporations and how to do these different things and just play the rules. Mm-hmm. And then moving here, it's like, oh, there are no rules. So that getting out of that perfection mindset and more so embracing action, execution, learning, get back up, like resiliency is everything. When I first start working with people and I notice like they're kind of falling off, I know it's because they're expecting for it to be like instant responses. And I have to remind them like, do not stop. Like this is all, yes, I have the frameworks and processes for you, but it's still implementation and testing inside of your particular business. And so if you're looking for it to be perfect out of the gate, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You have to get out there. And these people that are selling, you know, way more than you do and have way less experience and expertise, they're doing it just because they decide that they're going to putting their hat in the ring no matter what. They're not sitting over here mulling over and thinking about, oh, well, I don't have this, I don't have that. They're taking what they have and they're getting up to the bat. That's the only way that you're going to succeed. So that is like the biggest point that I even still have to remind myself of today, because it's not that those thoughts never come up for me or that I don't face any of the things that I'm telling you guys. I also have to remind myself. I also have to remember that, yes, here's my mindset. Here is how I'm approaching this. When something is a setback, I'm like, okay, it used to get me down for a long time, but now I'm like, all right, next, let's go. And so it's a constant decision in every moment to keep going. I could go on and on about the mindset piece because that's the greatest. It could be the greatest blocker or it could be the greatest catalyst to where you're looking to go.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. And I mean, fellow high achiever here, fellow person that never had to really have a big effort lift in learning spaces and just learning things in general. And one of the things that I am even having to tell myself is that done is better than perfect. There are so many things that I have delayed launching because it had to be a certain way first. When meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'm scrolling on my timelines and I see all manner of non-expertise, nothing super polished, but they have audience, followers, community, and claims of earnings just because they decided to show up. Yeah, it will work itself out. Like this well-rounded podcast, I started with a podcast in 2018 before they got popular, right? Because I've always been a person that's been like visionary in the space. And for whatever reason, I think for me, even though like, so nowadays it's okay to record things from your phone or whatever, you know, like low production value doesn't matter anymore, but it kind of did at that time. And I think because I was using whatever tools I had at the crib and it wasn't like this studio level production quality, I was like afraid to launch it, even though I had some really dope guests that recorded for me, people that would probably be hard for me to get now, because now people treat podcasts like movie auditions sometimes, where you'd be like, you know, but had I maintained momentum and just let it be what it was and let it grow as I went along, where would that be? Where would I be as far as just a voice in this space? And so, you know, timing is everything. And all things work together, and seasons, reasons, and lifetimes, and all those things, right? So if whenever it's your season, then, that's what it's going to be. But I feel like sometimes we can delay what is for us by that mindset of production, of perfection, rather, that mindset of, well, let's just say imposter syndrome. I feel like imposter syndrome can put a hitch in a lot of people's giddy up. And I can definitely see that being the case in what we're talking about today with these government contracts. When you talked about the pricing just now, I mean, if that wasn't an example of know your worth and add tax, I don't know what was. When you think about as an individual contributor in an organization, you made a company $16 million and you're over here sweating over 25,000,
right,
30,000 to like, oh gosh, I don't want them. Like, listen,
it's nothing. That's nothing to them. That is nothing. And then the other thing that I'll say too is like when companies like invest in things too, like they're not expecting so much out of like a $25,000 thing. Like a $25,000 could be a speech or a Q&A type of deal. They're not expecting like their whole company and world to change from something like that. Like that's little money. And so we also have to think about that too, with the impact that these organizations, like you're just a piece of the puzzle. You're not in there to solve the world's problems and do everything that they need to get things up. I was talking to someone doing an audit the other day and she was like, yeah, I really want to work with these organizations and be like their sales manager. I said, girl, do not do that. That sounds like a whole lot of work and they don't need that. Like you could go in there and just do a training. And that could like be it. So be okay with like keeping it small too. Like it doesn't have to be stuffed with all these different elements and things in order to put 25,000 on it. Like, no, 25,000 could be literally one thing and that's it. $100,000 thing could be a couple of pieces and not 10 lines of services and everything that they're going to get. No, you're a piece into a larger organization that has many different things going to achieve their goals. You're just helping them in one key area.
Okay, so I want to go back to a couple of lanes of contracts that you touched on, because I think just as they were unfamiliar territory to me, and I feel like I have somewhat of a knowledge of this space a little bit, I'm sure that the people watching would want to just have a little bit more of an understanding about what does this look like in the education space, because what we've been talking about as far as like the workshops and the Q&A, or the different, the keynotes rather,
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, okay, it can probably click faster for people when we're thinking about actual like businesses. But when we're talking about like universities or K-12, would they be performing the same type of tasks, or working with educators? Would there be some difference, or it applies there as well? What you're saying?
Yeah, it applies there as well. So if you're doing any type of leadership development or professional development around like stress and burnout or communication, emotional intelligence, productivity, all of that still is things that are needed in the university space, and particularly in the K-12. Like if you do anything to help prevent stress and burnout, that's like gold over there. And even as you're working with the students, I was talking to someone last night and sharing with her, like, I mentioned to you early on, she does like breathing exercises and like mindfulness work. And she was like, I could totally see doing this like with kids before they do testing or SATs or all of those things. So like the breadth of what you could do could have so much impact in different arenas. And it's still the same thing. Like it's still her mindfulness work that she would take professionals through in an organization. Mm-hmm. All she's now doing is bringing it to a different group that experiences similar stress. It's just a different outcome or different activity that they're doing, but it's still the same process. So you don't have to morph or overhaul everything that you're doing. You may just put a different lens on it instead of saying like, okay, I'm going to walk you through some practices before you go into your next big meeting. You literally say, we're going to walk you through some practices before you go into your next big test. Like that's the only, change or kind of way that you would want to speak about it to make sense to that audience. But the core of what you do is transferable likely in multiple different segments for the same purpose.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the licensing. Mm-hmm. So as people are preparing their content for like a course, would they be like giving people just like curriculums that somebody in their organization will facilitate from there, like training manuals, where will they be the one that comes back and trains on or teaches, does the thing on a recurring basis? Is it recorded? And that's like, what does licensing mean?
Yeah. So licensing is essentially giving someone rights to use whatever IP or intellectual property that you have for a set period of time. So it could look like having a portal of courses so I actually did this with a nonprofit organization. I created 2 courses for them and I gave them access to that. We didn't do all fancy into a portal, but I gave them a limited license over the courses. And then once that license expires, they have the option to renew. So it could be as fancy as having a portal that they log into and you literally license seats. So if you think about, in college, for example, if you had like a textbook that has some additional materials that you would kind of log into and, they'd have lessons and all of that, those codes that you put in are licenses. And so that's the similar thing that you can provide for any of your educational materials where they have access to a portal and be able to do that. And again, you can do that by seat or employee, or have some type of bulk deal for organizations at large. But as you mentioned, you can add additional elements to it where, yes, you could come in and like train the trainer. That's another service that you can provide as a part of giving them licensing rights and then showing people how to help the greater workforce be able to execute it by training individuals. You can license, it was something else that you mentioned that I wanted to point out. So you can license recordings to your trainings as well. So say you do something live, you do a workshop live, and they want to get access for how many ever months or years or whatever the case may be, you can give them licensing to those recordings. This is where you want to tap into your attorneys and make sure that you have that protection and the language around what it could look like and putting it together. But those are just some of the ways those are just a couple different ways you could leverage licensing to get recurring revenue off of some of these contract opportunities.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like today, Kirstyn has laced you up on game that could really be a game changer for income in your business and growth as a thought leader and an expert in your industry. Just really, if you have to go back and listen to this recording again to make sure that you got all of the nuggets that she dropped, please do. She gave you several different types of contracts you could pursue. She gave you information and insight on how to price your services. She gave you information and insight on how to position yourself to be considered, where to find them, gave you information on different ways and modalities that you can do to stretch your intellectual property and your expertise to not only think outside of the box to make greater product offerings, but then to also have that content exist evergreen in perpetuity.
Right.
This is amazing. And I really, really hope that those out there who are listening, take note of this. We are at the time of this recording, it's November. It's at the beginning of the end of the year. And so as we're preparing for the beginning of the year, this should be the time that you are working on your strategic plan for your business and all aspects of it. Begin to make space for this. And as Kirstyn also shared, mindset is going to be like your secret weapon here. This is the time. Clear out the stinking thinking, imposter syndrome, fear, a scarcity mindset has no space in this place. Okay. This is something, if you are the expert, if you are the thought leader here, then step out and do it. Don't be afraid about your content not being relevant to them. Don't get tripped up on trying to, you're not an oil company, right? Don't try to make your marketing oil, right? You be who you are in the space of that organization, build something that adds value, and then show up, do your thing, and get your money. Get your money. The money apparently is out there, and I just want you all to win. And Kirstyn has shared an invaluable amount of information today on how to thrive in the corporate contract space. And I am so, so grateful. I have learned some things that I will make some adjustments to my own strategic plans for the coming year. But I know that there are so many people out there, even just defining what a contract really is and understanding payment terms. Like, you have accelerated your learning curve in this space tremendously. Whether or not you realize it, she has given you the shortcut. You are in the HOV lane, the carpool lane towards success. Right. And accomplishing and building this aspect of your business, which, as I was alluding to earlier, as we are shifting into new leadership in our country, you need to be a savvy business owner, and including all other types of ways that you can grow and sustain and build your business. This has just been amazing. So Kirstyn, tell the people, what do you have going on right now and where can they find you? Because I want people listening out there to go and blow up all your socials and sign up for whatever you have going on, because as you all have heard and hopefully can sense and discern, she is a wealth of knowledge that partnering with her sounds like a move for your business that is just explosive opportunities and success. So where can they find you? What do you have going on so that we can participate and support you?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things that I'll share. First of all, is that my new book is releasing in December. So it is all about getting corporate contracts. So if you enjoyed this conversation, I have a whole book on all of these things that we spoke about today, plus more and that's just scratching the surface as well.
What's the name of the book?
Yes. So the name of the book is Get Corporate Clients Now, which is also the name of our entire brand of work. So the program that we have is also Get Corporate Clients Now. So remember that name because that's the universe of how you can tap into the work that we're doing. So that book is coming to the Amazon streets near you in December of 2024. So be sure to check that out, as well as if you're looking to come in closer and get specific support on where you are, then I definitely would encourage you to check out the Get Corporate Clients Now program. It is our end-to-end program where we walk you through all of the steps that we shared today, plus more, in order to set your business up for corporate contract success. And then you also get my eyes and you see how I go with questions on all of the areas in which you personally could be tapping into these opportunities and making sure that you have the support to make it your reality. My goal in that program is, yes, to do the training and show you the opportunities, but also to provide access. So this is a space where when I have contacts or when I have opportunities, I want to be able to bring those things to my vetted community that I know has gone through the process and that are prepared, and say like, hey, here's where you can be tapping into people who have the dollars. One of the things that we didn't get to mention that is also important is that while vendors are looking for you, most people come to them unprepared. Most people are treating opportunities to meet corporations like they're going to a job fair and saying, what do you have for me? And that does not work. And so I want to make sure that people in my community or that are connected to me, even you all listen to this podcast, will not be approaching opportunities in that way, because the more that happens, and when companies and organizations don't spend their budgets, they shrink. And so the money that is available to us, especially those of us who are minority or women-owned businesses, there is set aside money just for us. And if it's not being claimed, then the budgets will continue to shrink and shrink and shrink. And one of the lights that we can look at too, as our economy hopefully begins to turn around in the positive, is that as consumers are spending, companies increase their budgets. And so we want to make sure that we're in a place where we're tapping into those opportunities, especially now with where our economy is hopefully going, that we're building those relationships and that we are prepared. That is like the most important thing that you want to keep in mind. So whether it is locking in, it's something that we're doing, or even just DIYing your way to it, get prepared for the opportunities before you step into the room, because it could literally be just a relationship. But if you don't have the pieces in place, they'll move on to the next. And the more that happens, opportunities will continue to shrink for us. And I don't want to see that. So my work in the world is, how do I make sure that that doesn't happen, and also help other people establish the foundation and legacy they wish to create for their business. So you can find me on all platforms, LinkedIn, connect with me. I love when people say, I heard you on a podcast. So let me know where you heard me from and your takeaways. So Facebook, LinkedIn under my name, Kirstyn J. Allen, Instagram as well are places in which you can connect with me and see all of the world of things that we do. But yes, I would love to hear where you're going with this information. And Tisha said, take note. I say, take action. You have at least one thing that you can go and do, even if it's, I looked up a company and got on the vendor portal. There is one thing that you can do from this conversation. So do not get off this line without doing something.
Yeah, I love it. Get corporate clients now, y'all. The book is coming to Amazon here in in December. The program is available. Connect to Kirstyn. Alignment, y'all. When you get in alignment, and when the people that are meant to help guide you on your journey come into your pathway, don't miss it. Like she said, take action. I said take notes. She said take action. Listen. I love it. I love it. Well, Kirstyn, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I am grateful for the wealth of knowledge that you shared. Your openness and transparency, I know, is going to bless you. And I wish you all the success with your upcoming book and helping more and more people tap into these opportunities.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So this was an amazing conversation. I had an amazing time. So thank you for the invitation and to be able to pour into your people in this way. I agree. I think this is going to bless someone so well. And I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to have the conversation with you. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. All right, y'all. Well, that is our show for today. Join us next time for the Well-Rounded Podcast. See you.
Bye.